So we've done one of the common things here. We've fully assembled the roof rack, and then we've realized that we need to put the T-nuts in the slots because we're installing floor inserts on this. So now we've taken the bolts back out of one side, and we are now installing these, and they have a little nipple on them, and the nipple faces upward, not downward, upward. So we put that on there, and on each one of these tracks, every single one of them get 4 of these T-nuts on them, and then that'll allow us, we'll get these separated on here. And I use one of the screws to just kind of pull these along. And then what we do is we'll put the roof rack in or back together here. Now, these are countersunk Allen bolts that go on the side here. So when the bolts are in there and they're tight, they are flush on the side here, because this bar actually, these side panels slide into the roof rack from the back side here. And there's nothing exposed out the side of these roof racks when they get all tightened up, but these little squares. These squares, the Allens go in from this side. These get slid into the track system from the back side, and then these get tightened up to pull it tight against the sides, and then we go back and we space the back out to insert the floor inserts onto the top of this. But what we do is we loosen the rack back here and up in the front. We actually take the bolts out of the back side back here, and that allows us to lift the rack up, slide the rack into place, get it where we want it, put it back down under where it belongs, put the screws back in it, and then tighten all the screws on the side. That will tighten up all these little fasteners here on the side. The visor's on it, everything's completely assembled as one solid unit except for the inserts before it goes onto the roof of the vehicle. Countersunk Allens here, countersunk Allens here, 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 and here, and here, and all the way up to the front. Another thing we did that is a problem is we put the emblem, our Westcott Designs emblem on here prematurely. We put this emblem on, the rack has to get installed into the top, and then the emblem has to get reinstalled, and it's underneath the bar as it runs here. And so we get every one of them started before we go around and tighten them, because when we tighten them, it pulls the rack together tight. So what Warren's doing is he's working these bolts back and forth. There's actually a clip that's underneath the headliner. There's a clip that's underneath the headliner on these. And that clip, you don't want to take one of the bolts out because it'll cause the clip to spin. So that actually keeps the clip from spinning underneath the headliner. So he's working them back and forth, and we'll do the same on the other side. As you can see, Warren is lightly warming the bolt head. So the bolt on the back side or the bottom side of it has red Loctite. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to heat the bolt to loosen up the Loctite. We're just trying to get the Loctite to loosen up on this. And once we get it to loosen up, he's trying to do it very carefully with warming just the head of the bolt without melting any of the plastic or any of the brackets from the roof rack, the factory roof rack. Now Warren has heated both the bolts. He's broke both of them loose. And as you can see, he's working them back and forth. And you want to work them back and forth because there's a clip that's underneath the headliner here that whatever you do not want that to take one of the bolts out first, and then the clip will spin around underneath there, and then you cannot get it out, and you have to drop the headliner to get it out. So he's working them. He's almost got this one where he can turn this one by hand too. So we've got them both loose. And you want to do this on all the bolts on the roof rack. We're taking the rear bolts out of this because we're going to lift the rack and slide it in from the back here. The front ones get loosened, but the rear ones get taken out. So these particular bolts have blue Loctite, but some of the 4Runner bolts on the Pro models, they use the same style bolt, and they usually have red Loctite on it. So they're a little bit harder to get off. And then on top of the red Loctite on the 4Runner Pro bolts is they have an Allen in the top, and it makes it much harder because you don't have as much surface area to grab onto to turn the bolts. But you can see here that when he heated these, he was able to soften this up a little bit, and that's why we're able to break them loose like that. So there's these plastic covers on both the front and the back. You can see we've got the rear ones off already. On the back side, there's a seam, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to get it loose from the seam because there's clips on the back side of it. And what you want to do is you want to peel it off of those clips, and it allows it to slide itself forward or pop off as it slides forward. So there's a 12mm bolt there in the center. It's only a single bolt. It kind of goes in from the side. You're going to take the bolt off, and now that's going to allow us to lift the rack up like this to slide the rack in from the back side here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a bunch of people, as many as we can find, and we're going to line this up here with these little squares. We're going to slide them into these tracks.
Mine's it. All right, go. Good.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've slid this in. We took the bolts out of the back here. We took the center, the middle bolt here. We've loosened the front bolts. Obviously it took 3 of us, but 3 of us worked very well. We were able to slide it in from the back, get it into these tracks, get it lined up, get it so the visor is just behind the roof in the front, the sunroof. It fits really nice through the visor up here through the front. Like I said, we've loosened these screws here. Fits really nice and tight. It matches the line and styling of the factory roof rack. We'll go back and we'll put the screws back in. We'll get it set exactly how we want, and then we'll go and tighten up the bolts from the back side here, and then we will start to install our panel inserts. And we'll usually start from the back and use those as little platforms to move from the back to the front, and then put the front panel in last. So one thing that I found works really well is, you can see now that this is laying in here, I'm gonna take this little pick and I'm gonna line up all these little T-nuts exactly where they need to go, holding the pan down from underneath. And then I'm able to get these lined up here so I know exactly where these need to go in. I start them all by hand, just so I don't cross thread them. I keep working across. Sometimes you gotta wiggle them around a little bit. This little magnetic tray works really well. Don't suggest you have to buy one just to put your roof rack on, but we use them all the time. I realize now sitting up on top here that visually I can see down in the holes and line up the T-nuts down through the holes better with a direct spot here. So we're down to the last couple panels here. We're just lining these up. Like I said, we use a pick. The pick works really well. And then it's just, I say, some people will try to put them in with a tool. A lot of times they'll cross thread it. So what I like to do is just kind of feel lining it up with my finger and get it started. And then once I know I've got it started, then I'll go back in and I'll tighten it up with the wrench. So ratchet, you can use just a regular Allen wrench by itself, or you can put it on a ratchet wrench and it makes it much quicker that way. We've already installed the plastic corners, the plastic centerpiece here, and the plastic rear piece here. And then you can see we've put the emblem back in here after the roof rack was all put back into place. So that's the installment of our Land Cruiser basket rack for this. Like I said, it literally is really nice because it goes in just behind the sunroof. It fits into the factory roof rack rails. It tucks in nice. It accents it very nicely. A lot of the mounting points and hook points up here, so it's very useful. And as you can see, I'm sitting on it, and it can be used for a lot of different things.